My name is Abigail Hayes, and I am 29 years old. The first thing my mother, Monica, said when the hospital called to cancel my urgent spinal surgery was, "Stop being dramatic. The deposit for Brianna's designer wedding dress was due today, and she needs it." She said it loudly enough for every relative at the engagement dinner to hear. A few champagne glasses stopped in midair. My sister, Brianna, glanced at my braced back, then smiled as though trading my health for her wedding was a completely harmless sacrifice. The designer dress for my sister's destination wedding cost exactly the amount of the deposit that would have saved my spine from permanent nerve damage. And my mother, Monica, knew it. The bank transfer slip she signed literally read, "Abigail Emergency Medical Reserve," but Brianna was marrying into old money. Monica was drowning in secret debt. She needed that Aspen wedding to project a flawless illusion of wealth, to secure the marriage, to buy her own social survival. She traded my spine for a life raft. People always ask why I walked with a limp instead of walking away. They do not understand the weather in that house. Surviving meant being small. It meant taking up zero space, making zero noise, and accepting that my pain was just an inconvenience to the family calendar. When Monica told me to stop trying to steal my sister's spotlight with a backache, I swallowed the lump in my throat and limped back to my room. 10 years later, the illusion cracked. It started with a text from my 9-year-old niece, Mia. She had crawled under a mahogany desk to hide from Brianna's screaming. Right above her head, Monica's heavy steel floor safe sat wide open, carelessly left ajar by a woman too panicked by calls from debt collectors to spin the dial. Mia sent me a blurry photo. Spilling out of the safe was a thick, red-tabbed folder. The bold black letters across the top read, "Abigail, Legal Proxy and Estate." I took the photo straight to Arthur, the estate lawyer for my late grandmother, Gloria. He slid a stack of court documents across his desk. $12 million in commercial real estate and trusts. Gloria left every single penny to me. But for a decade, Monica had hijacked the entire estate. She forged a medical proxy, convincing the courts I was severely institutionalized and mentally incompetent. She stole my voice, my spine, and my future, all with a single pen. Arthur pointed to the heavy leather chair opposite his desk and pushed a stack of bound ledgers across the mahogany wood. We spent the next 3 hours tracing the ghosts of my past through bank statements and court filings. I opened a faded issue of a local high society bridal magazine. Brianna smiled brightly on page 42, posing under a massive, extravagant arch of imported white orchids in Aspen. Beside the glossy pages, Arthur placed my grandmother's handwritten accounting journal. The dates aligned flawlessly. On the exact Tuesday, the hospital administration called to cancel my spinal surgery for insufficient funds. A massive check cleared from my medical reserve account. The amount matched the Aspen florist deposit down to the very last cent. Another check, processed 48 hours later, covered the mountain resort venue. My fingers traced the faded blue ink in Gloria's journal. Tucked between the rigid financial columns, a loose piece of thick stationery slipped onto the desk. Her handwriting was sharp, pressing deep into the paper. "I cannot give Abigail her steps back," the note read, "but I can ensure no one steals her future." She knew. She watched me drag my right leg across the floor during those suffocating Sunday dinners. She watched Monica refuse to pay for my physical therapy. Gloria bypassed the entire toxic hierarchy and built a $12 million fortress with my name on the deed, silently waiting for the day I was strong enough to claim it. Then Arthur handed me the certified mail delivery receipts. These were the green slips for the legal estate notices Monica had intercepted over the past 10 years. My mother's looping signature dominated the receiver line. Right below it, on the witness line, a familiar Sloppy scrawl punched the air right out of my lungs. Gregory, my father. He signed them. Every single one. He stood in the foyer of that manicured suburban house, watched his wife steal my inheritance, watched her forge medical documents declaring his own daughter insane, and he simply put his name on the dotted line. He traded my sanity and my future for peace and quiet at his Sunday country club lunches. My hands rested flat against the table. They were completely steady. I stared at the signatures, the magazine, the journal. My family stripped me down for parts to fund a wedding, and then meticulously erased my existence so they would never have to look at the wreckage. I closed the manila folder. The audit was over. Old money does not tolerate new debt. Brianna's Aspen marriage lasted exactly 3 years before her husband's family locked their accounts and filed for divorce. The fallout left Monica and Brianna drowning in secret, suffocating debt. My phone buzzed against the cold metal of my hospital desk. The screen lit up with Monica's name. It was the first message she had sent me in 5 years. We need to put the past behind us. Come to the family healing brunch this Sunday. She weaponized the word healing. I opened the attached digital invitation. The ornate gold lettering confirmed this was not a quiet family apology. The guest list included 50 of Charlotte's wealthiest investors, local politicians, and out-of-state philanthropists. She was throwing a gala. I made a few quiet phone calls to Arthur. The reality of the ambush crystallized. Monica was using the brunch to launch a charity, shamelessly named the Gloria Family Legacy Foundation. She planned to leverage my grandmother's commercial properties, my properties as collateral to solicit massive donations. It was a lifeline to save her own bankrupt mansion from the bank. The invitation was a trap. Monica had a private notary waiting in her parlor. Her strategy was ruthlessly simple. She intended to pull me on stage in front of 50 elite strangers and hand me a check for $5,000. If I signed her family waiver, I surrendered my entire $12 million inheritance. If I refused, I became the hysterical, ungrateful daughter ruining a beautiful charity event. The wealthy crowd would judge me. Monica would play the martyr. She relied entirely on the old arithmetic of our house. She banked on my silence, my fear, and my desperate need to avoid causing a scene. She assumed I would shrink under the spotlight. I locked my phone screen. The dull ache at the base of my spine flared up, a permanent reminder of the last time I let her do the math. I grabbed my coat and headed for Arthur's office. I was done shrinking. I am 29 years old now, working as a clinical social worker at a pediatric hospital. I navigate broken families and toxic parents for a living. I thought I had seen every shade of human selfishness. Then Arthur pushed a heavy leather-bound ledger across his mahogany desk, and my professional detachment evaporated. We conducted a ruthless, paper-based audit. No complex hacking, no dramatic interrogations, just the cold, hard math of my mother's greed. Arthur opened a faded issue of a local bridal magazine. Brianna smiled brightly on page 42, posing under a massive arch of imported white orchids in Aspen. Beside the glossy pages, Arthur placed my grandmother Gloria's handwritten accounting journal. The dates aligned flawlessly. On the exact Tuesday, the hospital administration called to cancel my spinal surgery due to insufficient funds. A massive check cleared from my medical reserve account. The amount matched the Aspen florist deposit down to the very last cent. Another check, processed 48 hours later, covered the mountain resort venue. My fingers traced the faded blue ink in Gloria's journal. Tucked between the rigid financial columns, a loose piece of thick stationery slipped onto the desk. Her handwriting was sharp, pressing deep into the paper. I cannot give Abigail her steps back. The note read, but I can ensure no one steals her future. Gloria knew. She watched me drag my right leg across the hardwood floor during those suffocating Sunday dinners. She watched Monica refuse to pay for my physical therapy. So, my grandmother bypassed the toxic hierarchy entirely. She built a $12 million fortress with my name on the deed, silently waiting for the day I was strong enough to claim it. Then Arthur handed me the certified mail delivery receipts. These were the green slips for the legal estate notices Monica had intercepted over the past 10 years. My mother's looping signature dominated the receiver line. Right below it, on the witness line, a familiar, sloppy scrawl punched the air right out of my lungs. Gregory, my father. He signed them, every single one. He stood in the foyer of that manicured suburban house, watched his wife steal my inheritance, watched her forge medical documents declaring his own daughter insane, and he simply put his name on the dotted line. He traded my sanity and my future for peace and quiet at his Sunday country club lunches. My hands rested flat against the table. They were completely steady. I stared at the signatures, the magazine, the journal. My family stripped me down for parts to fund a wedding, and then meticulously erased my existence so they would never have to look at the wreckage. They broke me back then. But today, I am the one holding the hammer. The heavy oak doors of the parlor stood wide open. Inside, 50 people in tailored suits and silk dresses clinked champagne flutes and exchanged polite laughter. I walked straight past them. Arthur followed close behind me, carrying a single worn leather briefcase. Monica stood at the center of the room, beaming under a crystal chandelier. She faced a tripod holding a professional iPad. The recording light glowed bright red. The live stream to her out-of-state investors was running. And so, the Gloria Family Legacy Foundation will ensure my mother's $12 million estate serves the greater good. Monica cooed into the microphone, her voice dripping with practiced warmth. We are accepting initial pledges today. Together, we can build a future. I stopped right next to the tripod. I placed my manila folder flat on the mahogany coffee table. There is no foundation, I said. My voice was completely steady. It cut through the society chatter like a blade. The room went dead silent. Monica's smile froze, turning brittle and sharp around the edges. She glared at me, her eyes darting frantically to the iPad lens, then back to my face. She gripped the edges of her podium, trying to maintain the socialite mask. Arthur stepped past me. He pulled a thick, court-stamped document from his briefcase and handed it directly to Monica. Monica Hayes, you are formally served, Arthur stated, his tone carrying the uncompromising weight of the probate court. This is a temporary restraining order. Every asset belonging to Gloria's estate is legally frozen as of 9 o'clock this morning. The commercial properties you intend to use as collateral are locked. Panic rippled through the guests. A few women gasped. The clinking of glasses stopped entirely. Monica stared at the court stamp. The color drained from her face, leaving her pale and frantic. But she was a cornered animal, and cornered animals lash out. She spun toward the crowd, snatching a piece of paper from her own podium notes. Do not listen to her, Monica shrieked. The elegant hostess vanished, replaced by wild, unhinged desperation. Sweat beaded on her forehead. My daughter is unwell. She is severely institutionalized. I have her medical power of attorney right here. She is legally incompetent to make any claims about this estate. She held the document high, turning it toward the iPad lens to prove her authority to the investors watching online. She expected me to scream, to cry, to validate her narrative of a hysterical, broken daughter. I looked at the paper in her trembling hand. Turn it around, Monica, I said quietly. She hesitated, her breathing shallow and erratic. I pointed right at the top left corner of the page she was clutching. That document is dated August 14th of last year. Look at the logo. Monica's eyes darted to the paper. Mercy Hospital retired that Blue Cross logo 3 years before that date, I explained, speaking clearly into the iPad microphone. And the neurology department listed at the bottom. It wasn't even founded until November. I know that for a fact. I work there. The paper shook violently in her hand. The absolute certainty of the lie settled heavily over the room. No complicated legal battles, no shouting matches. Just a sloppy forgery exposed by a hospital employee's daily reality. Gregory stood near the catering table, his face flushed dark red. He looked at Arthur, then at the court order, and finally at the live-streaming iPad. Absolute terror broke his lifelong silence. "I told you," Gregory stammered, his voice carrying straight into the hot microphone. "I told you signing those mail receipts was a mistake. Monica, I told you keeping her letters would catch up to us." He covered his mouth with both hands, but the words were already out. He had just confessed to federal mail theft on a live broadcast to out-of-state investors. By soliciting pledges across state lines for a fraudulent charity built on forged documents, Monica had crossed a lethal boundary. It was no longer a petty family dispute. It was federal wire fraud. On the iPad screen, the viewer count plummeted. Pledges vanished. The investors disconnected in a mass, silent exodus. Brianna lunged forward to knock the tripod down, but a horrified investor stepped directly into her path, blocking her completely. Monica dropped the fake power of attorney. Her knees buckled beneath her. She collapsed into a velvet accent chair, staring blankly at the floor. The carefully manicured illusion of her entire life shattered into pieces she could never put back together. The consequences arrived with brutal, administrative efficiency. 2 days after the brunch, federal regulators and state authorities formally opened a wire fraud investigation into Monica's charity. The massive mahogany doors of the Charlotte mansion were soon bolted shut by the bank. Foreclosure notices replaced the gold-lettered party invitations. Gregory and Brianna immediately turned on each other, tearing apart their remaining relationships in desperate, vicious arguments over who would pay the mounting legal fees. I stayed completely away. I let the justice system grind them down. 6 months passed. The temporary restraining order cleared the courts, releasing the $12 million estate directly into my name. Arthur sat across from me one last time and slid the final transfer documents across his desk. I signed my name in sharp, deliberate strokes, moving the entirety of the commercial real estate and liquid assets into an ironclad irrevocable trust. The wealth was now legally locked, permanently shielded from the people who had tried to siphon it away. I bought a bright, sunlit storefront 2 towns over and transformed it into a community center. Above the glass doors, fresh gold lettering read, "Gloria's Room." Inside, low wooden shelves held hundreds of free books for vulnerable children. I also established and fully funded a locked educational trust for my 9-year-old niece, Mia, ensuring she possessed a guaranteed escape route from the chaos of her household. No one would ever hold her future hostage to pay for an illusion. On opening day, the afternoon sun spilled across the new hardwood floors. Mia sat curled up in a yellow beanbag chair in the corner, a heavy hardcover resting on her knees, reading in total, uninterrupted peace. I stood near the entrance, leaning slightly on my right leg. The dull ache at the base of my spine flared up, a permanent physical souvenir of my mother's greed. Today, the limp was not a mark of weakness. It was the grounded, unshakable stance of a woman who survived the fire and built a fortress from the ashes. The justice system did not care about Monica's manicured social standing. The federal judge sentenced her to 4 years in a state correctional facility for wire fraud, alongside court-ordered restitution of $250,000 in regulatory fines and civil penalties. The bank foreclosed on the Charlotte mansion exactly 3 weeks after the final verdict. Gregory and Brianna were completely ostracized from the life they thought they deserved. The country club formally revoked their family membership, and Brianna's remaining high society friends simply stopped returning her calls. The illusion they had sacrificed my spine to build evaporated into thin air. 7 months later, my phone buzzed with a blocked number. It was a 3-minute voicemail from Gregory. His voice was thin, trembling, begging me to remember that we were still family. He insisted that he only stayed quiet to keep the peace, and asked if I could spare a $20,000 loan for a modest apartment deposit. I sat in my quiet kitchen, listening to the desperate echo of a man who once watched me suffer just to protect his Sunday golf games. I felt absolutely no anger. I sat in perfect silence, hit delete, blocked the contact permanently, and went to make a cup of tea. My life now is remarkably peaceful. I spend my weekends at Gloria's room, organizing book drives with my colleagues from the pediatric hospital. I watch Mia grow into a brilliant, fearless young girl who knows she never has to earn her right to be loved. I am surrounded by chosen family friends who do not view my boundaries as a threat, and peers who value my presence. The air in my home is light. Nobody measures my worth by what they can extract from me. When you grow up in a toxic house, they teach you a twisted kind of arithmetic. They weigh your value strictly by your utility, your obedience, and your silence. You do not have to accept their math. I learned 3 vital rules the hard way. First, never let an enabler's silence define your worth. Gregory's quiet complicity was just as violent as Monica's outright theft. Second, keep your receipts, because reality is your shield. Toxic people rely on emotional chaos and guilt trips to gaslight you, but paper trails, cleared checks, and court stamps do not have emotions. Third, the ultimate revenge is irrelevance. You do not need to actively destroy them. You simply need to build a beautiful fortress of success and peace that they are permanently, legally locked out of. I am Abigail, and my future belongs entirely to me. If someone is charging you your sanity just to keep a seat at their table, isn't it time you stood up and built your own house?